That was awesome. Man, if you were a guy, you weren't here on Thursday night, we for sure missed you. We had a great time. And so I want to make sure that if that's not on your calendar, we're going to have some more, as well as we got some great Guy Connect groups. And we just want to make sure that every single one of you absolutely feels like you have a place to belong here. If you're here for the very first time, we're so glad. Come on, give a huge shout out to all our first time guests. Glad you're here. How's everybody feeling this morning? Feeling good? Okay, that was. I'm gonna give you another shot at that one. So are you feeling good this morning? You feeling? Good? All right. Awesome. We're in this series called The Grind to Getting There, and what we're talking about is this idea that so many of us have dreams, visions, things that we feel like God has put inside of our heart, or maybe you don't even know too much about God, but you have some things that you would like to see in your life, especially moving forward. And the frustrating part with that is always it doesn't seem like they happen as fast as we would like them to happen, right? For three of us, right? Like, don't you wish things happen faster? Like, especially like the good stuff, like I wish my bank account just, I just need that to go faster, like it needs to outpace my spending. Yes, we understand those things. Those are things that we have, and even past all of those resources or past those things that really don't matter for eternity. I'm talking about things that you feel like you have dreams for your family, things that you have dreams for your future, things that you feel like God's called you to in life. And when they don't happen as fast as we want them to, frustration can start to set in. And when frustration starts to set in, a lot of times we don't point any kind of finger at ourselves. We start looking at everything else, right? And we start saying, well, this is why it's easy to get frustrated with God, because obviously it's God's fault that I haven't got these things forward that I'd like to. And so this grind to getting there are things, and we've been talking about them for the last couple of weeks. This morning, I want to talk about this idea of what happens when you actually start getting there. Like what happens when you actually start moving into a new season? What happens when you actually start getting into the beginning of the answer to your prayer? Like how do you respond to that? How do you move in a new way? And I just a week or so ago we had a celebration for my mom and dad. Their birthdays are like 4 days apart, and so we're like, hey, listen, y'all, we've been celebrating your birthday for a while. We're going to put them together, and we're going to love you together. And so they both got a bunch of presents, all that kind of stuff. But we were sitting down, and my dad wanted this cake. I don't know if some of you know this cake. This is nothing but bundt cake. And so that we had that. And then my mom made for my dad his favorite. She made a homemade strawberry pie. And listen, y'all, like you're sitting down and you're like, okay, what am I choosing? And I'm like, I'm not choosing. I'm just having both. And so I have both. And I sat down and I had a couple bites of the cake. Oh, it's great. It's good. I took a bite of that homemade strawberry pie. And I was like, see, you can't buy that in a store. Like that just hits different. Anybody else, when you get I don't know what kind of homemade thing. Listen, we're almost at noon. So you're like, come on, boy. Like this is good. Like I remember this. The taste wasn't even comparable. My mom's homemade strawberry pie it just hit different. Homemade stuff hits different. And I'm telling you, when you start understanding this idea of homemade thing, you're like, man, I love homemade. I love homemade. I love homemade. Well, homemade takes work. Like take some things that are different than just pulling up and saying, I'll take one of those. It's different. This was something that the Israelites were about to find out. Like, yes, they could say, I want home cooking. But there's something that was different when they had to get into it. Look at this. This is Joshua chapter 5. Joshua chapter 5, verse 10. They are on the outskirts of being able to walk into Canaan. They have gone through a huge journey. They have gone through some major, major fights, and now they're about to walk into something new. While the Israelites were camped at Gilgal on the plains of Jericho, they celebrated Passover on the evening of the 14th day of the first month. The very next day, look at this, verse 11. The very next day, they began to eat unleavened bread and roasted grain harvested from the land. Harvested from the land. Verse 12. No manna appeared on the day they first ate from the crops of the land. No manna appeared after they started eating home cooking. None. And it was never seen again. So from that time, the Israelites ate from the crops of Canaan. You're wondering, why are we talking about food? Why is this such a big deal? It's a big deal because you start seeing there's a different shift that needs to happen in your life when you start going into a new place. And the things that you used to do that were in that old place, you do not do now as you're walking into a new place. But if you don't understand that, you will keep acting like you are a wanderer in the wilderness when God brought you into a new land. You will still act like a slave that was in Egypt when God gave you freedom in a new place because you haven't understood, you haven't got this yet. Oh, I'm in a new place. Look at this, verse 9. This is before what we just read, verse 10. Lord is talking to Israel and he says this. Then the Lord said to Joshua, today I have rolled away the shame of your slavery in Egypt. So that place has been called Gilgal to this day. I've rolled away the shame. So you can see that God is trying to get Israel to look at themselves in a new way. But if you can't see yourself in a new light, you won't be able to walk into that new place that God has for you because you can't live in the past if you want to walk into your future. You cannot live in your past if you want to move into your future. You cannot do it. It will not work. And this is why God looked at Israel and verse 9 said, today I'm rolling away the shame of slavery in Egypt over your life. Some of you have been calling yourselves slaves for far too long. You haven't been a slave since I've given you freedom. But now that you're walking into this new place, I need to roll back that shame because you've been living in shame far too long. And you've been living in this cloud that says you're not this or you're not that, or you can't walk into a new place, or you can't set up your own thing for your family, you can't own land, or you can't do because you still think of yourself as a slave. And I've got to roll back that shame on your life so you can walk into something new. God has been trying to get stuff new in your hands this whole week, this whole month, this whole year, but you keep thinking like you're a slave. We keep thinking like we're way back there, and God said, I've rolled that thing back. I've pulled that thing away from you. Why are you still walking like you did those things that I forgave you 30 years ago? I'm rolling back the shame. My brother-in-law is a great cook, but when he was trying to woo my sister, he thought he would cook all of our family this great meal. He made chicken spaghetti. This sounds good to some of you. Not the way that he made it. Listen, it was darn near unedible. I loved my brother-in-law. I even loved him when he was dating my sister. And I was like, I'm just going to eat this because I'm not going to want to embarrass him. But wow, this is real bad. And then he paired it with grape Kool-Aid, which is a weird pairing. And so I'm trying to drink as much grape Kool-Aid this is a real bad mix. It's real bad. And I'm just trying to get it down. And then he topped it off with caramel brownies, which is good. If the caramels would have been like caramel that you put in brownies, instead he just threw a bunch of those hunks of caramel in the brownie mix, so you'd be eating a good brownie, and then surprise, you'd lose a tooth when you bit that huge brick of caramel. Now, listen, my brother-in-law had a chance to live there and never cook again. Or he's like, no, I was just whatever, and that was my past, and now I'm going to do that. So thankful for that, because he makes some killer homemade pizza that we all love. So, but that would be ridiculous if you're like, oh, I messed up, and I'm never going to do it. But that's what shame does to you. And we laugh at food, but we live in shame. And we don't act like we are forgiven. And we don't act like God actually put us in that spot. You don't act like God gave you that promotion. You don't act like God gave you those blessings financially so you can be a blessing. You keep putting your head down and you're like, no. But you don't, because you still kind of live in some shame of whatever that is. I don't know what kind of shame you're living with. Shame of past decisions, or shame of bad financial decisions, or shame of failed business ventures, or shame of things that you should have done at one point but you didn't do, or shame of failed relationships, that every time your relationship starts getting good you think, I'm going to mess it up again, because you've lived in this shame for far too long. And just live there. You walk in Sunday and you see people lifting their hands and worshiping, you're like, that's not for me, because of what I did last night or what I've done this last week. And you live, and let me tell you, guilt and shame are different. Guilt and shame are different. Guilt focuses with your action, what you did. Shame focuses on your identity, on who you are. And so you can have both of them working at the same time. Guilt about what you did, but shame about who you are. And this is why shame is so destructive. And this is why God said, I'm rolling back. You know, he didn't say roll back guilt. He said, I'm rolling back shame. Shame of you and the slavery in Egypt. Why? Because he knows that shame talks about your identity. You're not a slave anymore, Israel. Come on, church. You're not a slave anymore. I'm rolling back that shame. I'm rolling back that thing. Is shame and guilt are completely different. And that is why the enemy loves to use shame so much to every single one of us, because he knows it attacks your identity. Shame is of the devil. You have shame in your life. That is not God trying to get you better. That is the devil trying to get you lower. And the enemy is trying to lie to you and tell you that shame is okay in your life. But listen, the first time sin entered the world, Adam and Eve hid because of shame. They were ashamed. And then if you go further, you see the prodigal son, what he did when he came back. He said, I was ashamed, or I could not call myself your son. Why? Because shame talks about your identity, and it tries to rip apart the things that God has built up in your life. And God looks at you and says, you are a son, you are a daughter, you are the one that I made sure could be clean and walk in front of me. Shame, I'm rolling off of you. But there's so many of us that have lived for too long in a place that says the only way that I can get people to live right is to shame them. And the church has grabbed this for far too long. And if you shame people, you'll get them to act right. And I'm telling you, you're just using a tool of Satan, thinking that we're getting people to act right, but you're just putting bondage on them. And so if you are going to act like God, if we want to be a church that follows in God's footsteps, guess what? Our job is to continually roll back shame from people's lives. Roll back shame. But you don't understand the thing that I did. You don't understand the divorces that I've had. You don't understand the broken relationships. You don't understand the things that I've had that have just been abuses in my life. You don't understand the things that I've said. You don't understand the alcohol that has been a part of my life for so too long. You don't understand the things that I've had, the problems with drugs, the problems with habits and things that I just can't get. You don't know. And our job, if we're going to let the light of God come out of our life, is roll back shame and say, no, God's taking shame away from you. That is not who you are. That might have been something you did, but that's not who you are. Your actions do not mean that you are that. God can forgive you of all of those things that you've done, and he's going to look at you and say, you are clean, you're good, I've rolled back the shame from your life, and this day, you walk into something new, because you're not going to be walking in with shame anymore. You're going to be walking with me in front of you. And I'm going to act like it when I go to my job. I'm going to act like it when I go to coffee with somebody. I'm going to act like that when I interact with different people in my world. That I'm not going to have the shame of my past litter the footsteps of my future. I'm going to walk in a new way because God rolled it away. God said, no, you're not slaves anymore. That's not you anymore. And we keep trying to attach our identity to things that we've done. Listen, some of you're living with shame, but it's not because of shame of things that you've done. It's shame of things that have been done to you. And somehow, some way, a lie has gotten into your heart that said it's your fault. And listen, I don't know who that's for, but I want to tell you that is a lie from the pit of hell. It is not your fault. You did nothing to deserve it. And God is making you clean right now, and he's trying to roll back the shame off of your life. The one that makes you walk in with your head down, thinking you're not worth anything. No one could love me. I could never have a real relationship. I can't look people in the eyes. I want to tell you, God is working in your life right now to roll back the shame. Some of you who are saying, no, that's for them. God's going to work in their life, but God can never do that for me, and God can never do that in my life. That's a lie from the pit of hell. God is trying to roll back shame off of your life so you can stand up tall and look up straight and get your eyes bright and say, look at what God has done. I didn't do this, but God cleaned me up. God turned me around. God set my feet right where I needed to be, and God did all this. I didn't do it. It wasn't my good works. It wasn't the way that I tried to do it right. It wasn't all of my good decisions. It was the grace of God that worked in my heart, and that's what you see this morning. You don't see me. You see the grace of God in me. And all of a sudden, things start changing. Why? Because God's rolling back shame in your life. He's rolling it back. Some of you, somehow, because of a bad decision, you think you're in spiritual timeout. And you just got to sit somewhere and sulk. Because at some point, maybe God will be less mad at me. That is not God's forgiveness. And that is not God's grace. There is no spiritual timeout. There is nothing that you can do to make God earn, or to let you earn God's love. There is nothing you can do that will make God love you more, and there is nothing you can do that will make God love you less. His love is not dependent on what you do or not do. His love is constant. That is why it is such an amazing thing when you start seeing the grace of God in action in people's lives. Because it supersedes actions. Does he want to change the way you do? Yes, he doesn't want you to destroy your life. He doesn't want you to have destructive habits. He doesn't want you to have things that continually let hell come into your life. He doesn't want you to live like that. That's, of course, he wants to change that. But that does not mean he loves you any less or more because of what you do. And so God says, I'm going to roll back the shame so you can walk into this, walk into this new place. Because everybody wants the new level, right? Everybody wants, come on, God, level me up. Come on, let's go. And God's like, there's some work that I got to do. And first, I got to work inside. I got to do that so I can move on. Look at this. We read this at the beginning. He said, the very next day, they began to eat unleavened bread and roasted grain, harvest from the land. No manna appeared on the day that they first ate from the crops of the land, because they needed to learn a new way. And we must learn a new way. Imagine, this is what's going on with them. You got 400 or so odd years of slavery. That's generation after generation after generation that are slaves, that do what they just do what they're told. Then after that, a generation that was released from slavery, but was brought into the wilderness. And they had to learn how to trust God in wilderness settings. And then you have another generation after that generation now walking into the land. And all they have known for generation to generation to generation to generation is what they've been given. So you've got a new generation walking into this new place that God has for them, and all they know is to go out in the morning and pick up their food. That's all they know. And now, as they go into a new season, what did the Bible say? They harvested grain, they cooked it, made their own food, and right then the manna stopped. Why? Because they were in a new season, and they had to learn something new. Imagine how mad they were after they had that great meal that they cooked and harvested. They walk out and, you know, I'm gonna have a manna omelet in the morning. It's gonna be so sweet. And you walk out and there's nothing there. All of a sudden you're like, God, where are you? And some of you are mad at God because you think he's not giving you something. But maybe he's not trying to give you something, he's trying to teach you something. But all you've learned in your whole life is this. And God says, no, Israel, I'm trying to teach you something new. This is a new level for you all. You're about to build homes. You're about to have your own fields. You're about to build your own cities. You're about to sit here and you're going to be, this is the land I'm giving you. But you, listen, picking up something off the ground isn't going to help you do what I need you to do. You need to learn how to harvest. You need to learn how to do something a little bit newer. Might be brand new to some of you, but harvesting, listen, I grew up in Illinois. I grew up on a farm. It wasn't that, but it was a real farm. And we had stuff that we had, there was harvest time and all that kind of stuff. Listen, when it was harvest time, nothing else mattered. Because it was just different. You just pushed everything else aside and you had to get all of that grain. You had to get all the corn, all the beans. You had to get it all in a certain time. Otherwise, you would lose some of the harvest. And so you had to do it. Listen, it is a different kind of thing than picking up something off the ground. Harvesting was completely different. There was work involved. There was planning involved. You needed more people. You needed barns. You needed things where you could store that stuff. It was different than picking up. And some of us are still in a pickup mode when God is asking you to be in a harvest mode and saying, I'm trying to build you and bring you into something new, but you won't have it. You won't get with me understanding. You need to learn something, because I will tell you, your teachability is directly related to your climbability. The more you want to learn, the more you'll level up. The different things, see, you need new skills for new stages. God wants you God wants you to go to a new place, but he wants to teach you something new. And until you learn something new, you will never be able to go into that place. Some of us are still stuck outside, mad at God, wondering where God's provision is. And God's saying, I'm trying to get you to work the ground, baby. I gave you this ground. I gave you this land. I want you to work it. I know you're used to just picking stuff up, but I need you to work this thing now. I need you to learn a little different. So some of you, listen, this is a different way of saying it. What got you here will not get you, come on, there. What got you here will not get you there. So you've got to learn something new. Some of you, your only relationship thing is to put a shield up. Let people know you for a little bit and then put a shield up. Because guess what? That helped you get you to here. But now God is trying to teach you, you got to bring the shield down because the vulnerability is the only thing that's going to get you here. But if you keep living here, shielded, not letting anybody in because of past hurt and past mistakes, that's where you stay. And God's trying to get you to learn new. What got you here will not get you there. You're starting a new school year, a new college year. What got you here will not get you there. Got to learn something new. So, some of you are wondering why your relationships aren't working out. It's because all of those things, I know that it got you here, but in this new godly relationship, you got to learn something new on how to have a good godly relationship. You have to. And until you do, you're going to be mad at God, sitting here, picking up nothing, wondering where God is. And God is saying, if you just learn something new, I'll put you right here, right where you need to be. Some of us, we're so comfortable in what we know. And when we start talking about what we don't know, we get real uncomfortable real quick. So what needs to happen when you start feeling that uncomfortable moment, you need to say, God, this is a God thing. God, please teach me what I don't know. I want to be teachable. I've never harvested before. I've never worked the ground. I've only picked up manna. That's the only thing I've ever known. But God, please teach me. Please help me. I want to learn because I want to grow. And I don't want to stay the same. And I don't want to stay at the same level. And I don't want to be in this pause button mentality that says I'm not going to learn anything new, but I want God to do everything for me. God, I want you to teach me. I want you to have my heart be open and honest. See, this is when you kill pride. And this is what the Bible says, when pride dies, grace abounds. Because he doesn't give any grace to the prideful, but the people who are humble. That's what God said. Listen, you're humble, I'm going to give you all the grace, all the help. That's the moment you start saying, God, teach me, help me. I can learn from anybody. I can learn from somebody who's 5 and somebody who's 55 and 105. I can learn from anyone. I can be open and honest. God, help me, because I know there are some things that I do not know. And the moment that I start to know them, God, you will move me into a new level. The moment I start to learn them. This scripture in Proverbs chapter 9, verse 9. I love this scripture. It says, instruct the wise, and they will become even wiser. Teach the righteous, and they will learn even more. Why does it always seem like the people that really need to know something don't care to know it? Anybody else with me? Okay, it's just me. Okay. Why does it feel like the people that really need to know something? You're like, and you usually get the best conversations when you're taking a shower. And you're like, I should have told them this. And then when I told them that, get them with that. And then I'd come in with this, and yeah. And you're like the king of conversation, the queen of conversation at that moment. But you start going through, man, why does it always seem like the people who really need to know something don't care to know it? Because the flip side is true. A wise person is always a teachable person. And so they're hungry to know. And they're hungry to learn. And they're hungry to move forward. And so they're like, teach me, teach me, teach me, teach me, teach me, teach me. I don't know what I don't know. Teach me, teach me, teach me. And it's in that moment, come on, it's in that, for those of you who think your marriage is rocky because your spouse doesn't know something, maybe it's time for you to take a step back and say, maybe I don't know something. Just look at me. Don't look at anybody else. Please don't look at your spouse. It's going to be freaking awkward in here real quick. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you're at the end of your parenting rope. God, help me to learn some things. And you're like, no, that's wrong, Ben. My kids need to learn something. That is true. But don't you want to model to your kids how it means to be wise? So as a parent, I'm telling on myself right now. I'm like, oh, I got to learn some things, God. I want to learn. I don't want to walk out and just expect stuff to be on the ground and think, God, where are you? And why haven't you moved? This thing will help you level up so fast. Because your teachability is directly related to your climbability. It'll help you move into that new season. Let's all stand to our feet. We're going to pray in just a moment. This idea here, you know, you read this and you're like, okay, they're harvesting grain. They're in the promised land. Awesome. This is what I want. This is what God always promised us. And this little piece right there that we read is right before they go on to fight the Battle of Jericho. And so it's so easy to think that, okay, let me learn something. Let me walk into a new place. Okay, God, I'm trying to be as teachable as I can. And now God's bringing you a new level, this new space. Can I also tell you there are fights in that new space? Now, God will bring you through those fights. But don't expect that when God puts you into a new level, that there's not going to be a fight associated with it. The great thing about it is God is going to fight right beside you, and God will carry the things that you can't carry, and God will knock down walls that you can't knock down, and God will move you into spaces that everybody else would say, how do you deserve to be there? God will do that in your life. And so listen, this is a different type of fight when you walk into this kind of level. Because the Israelites have been in fights before. But they were fighting to get away. And this fight that they're about to walk into is a fight to occupy. Different kind of fighting. One was trying to get out of something. But when you go into a new level and you fight to stay into something, and you fight to occupy something, and you fight into, listen, we're taking new ground. Our family's taking new ground. Our businesses are taking new ground. My finances are taking new ground. My relationships are taking new ground. My academics are taking new ground. All of those things that God is moving you into It's a fight to occupy. It's a different fight. It's not a fight to run out of something. It's a fight to stay into something. And God said, I'm gonna be right there the whole time. So I don't know where you are at this moment, but I just want to let God have a moment here with each and every one of us, everyone watching online as well. Come on, if you feel comfortable, let's lift up our hands to God Almighty in this place, all over this room. Come on, God, teach me what we don't, teach us what we don't know. Open us up, Father. Make a way where there is no way. God, move forward where it seems like there's a wall.